I'm Rich Trouton. I'm from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. My particular areas of expertise are going to be Deploy Studio, Casper, some Absolute Manage, and Dell Cases KBox. More particularly on the KBox 1000 than the KBox 2000. So that's my core competencies. And handing it off.
Charles Edge, 318, and I would say mostly Casper and some Munki these days.
Mike Boylan, Robert Morris University. We use InstaDMG, Deploy Studio, Munki, and Managed Client for Mac OS X MCX.
I'm Eric Benfer. I'm with Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. We use Casper, InstaDMG, Crashplan, AppleScript, Bash, anything else in general.
I'm Nick McSpadden, Schools of Sacred Heart, San Francisco, and I mostly work with InstaDMG and Munki and a lot of different ways of managing browsers and making the students not break our stuff.
Robert Hammen, Tussauds Computer Services. I mostly use Casper, but I'm familiar with a lot of the other tools as well. It's trying to find the right tool for the job. That's always the challenge we have.
Clif Hirtle, Yukon, and we use a variety of tools. In fact, if I could make a slight plug, I was the guy who posted about a comparison matrix, and I would love to tap the collective expertise of the group. If you guys do want to contribute, I'd be glad to add you in there as collaborators. We use InstaDMG, DSS, Case, KBox, again, more on the 1000 side, and we did a pilot of JAMF and Absolute as well. So.
I'm Justin Elliott, Penn State, manager of the Mac and Linux lab teams. Also, we do streaming video, but for the labs, we use Blast-Merge config, of course. Rusty has a lot of experience with Deploy Studio, but we've used Radmine for years and years. We use a mixture of Radmine plus InstaDMG, as well as also IBM's Tivoli Endpoint Manager, formerly known as BigFix, just another system that pushes packages, very similar to other software distribution systems.
So who wants to lead off? Who has a question? You in the back.
I noticed, and I know it's very new, but none of you have mentioned Apple's Configurator in iOS deployments. And one of the things that I went to the session yesterday, we use Casper to manage about 1,000 Apples right now. And when we go with a faculty or a one-to-one ownership model, we'll use Casper to push out the applications and updates around that. But at our lower schools, we're dealing with carts and dealing with different things like that. And was looking at the check-in, check-out model of, what the configurator offers. And I'm just curious as to how those of you with Casper experience see the combination of those two working together, or how you see those things working.
Yeah, Charles, I think you're best qualified to answer.
So we just finished a 1,500 node deployment for that specifically, where we're just using Configurator to deploy the trust and enrollment profiles and push out the systems. If you're using Configurator in a supervised mode, though, I don't think that you'll want to use Casper overlaid on top of it. So if you're supervising as opposed to just configuring.
What about for things like recon, for inventory to get that? Because what we do is, one thing that's really nice is Casper integrates with Web Help Desk. So we get all of our inventory, we get our help desk tickets tied directly to the recon profile that we get off of the device. So can you have that Casper profile on there with the configurator pieces to get those?
As long as you're preparing devices and not supervising devices, then that should work great. But the reason you might want to supervise devices is to push content, and I think Casper is trying to take over the content distribution model. If you're in that equation, so you would use Configurator to prepare the devices and get them automatically enrolled in Casper. So you just dock them, wait, they're enrolled, and then you would in that equation you would use Casper to deploy your documents, because Casper 8.5 has that self-service document deployment feature. So
it's more moving, because we're dealing with young students, the ability to move data off and data back on, and
Yeah, but you're not gonna supervise and use Casper. I'll just.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, who's next?
I just wanted to add something to that. I also use Configurator and Casper as well. We just recently got into Casper, and we actually have two different models for our iOS deployment. We have both a one-to-one for the high school students, and we have a more traditional cart-based setup of iPads for the lower schools. And generally, in my experience, the strategy has been that if you're doing a one-to-one or a kind of a bring-your-own-device model, Casper is supreme. If you're doing a managed cart model where you want all the devices to be the same and you generally don't want them to be individually configured over time, then Configurator pretty much takes care of that for you. And outside of enrolling them into Casper just for inventory purposes, there's not a lot of benefit you get, as Charles mentioned, from both supervising and using Casper at the same time, because they both try to find the way to provide a means to get content onto the device or control the device's ability to run, what the kind of content that it has. And you don't want both at the same time because it just won't go anywhere. You won't get anything better out of it than just using one or the other. And if you're going to start with Configurator, you might as well keep going with Configurator.
And it's worth mentioning that a recon license is cheaper than an MDM license. So if you're just after reconing it, for what it's worth.
You, ma'am.
One side note with all this, one thing that's been very interesting for us with using Casper, and I know this is built into some of the other platforms, but we've had laptops that have been stolen, and even though it is not part of the Casper suite, we hide our admin account, and when the machines that have been stolen have actually gone on the internet and reported back in, we've been able to provide IP address, name, all this stuff to the police, and we've even gone on like Facebook, the name, got the cops the picture, here's the guy, go get it, and they've actually, that's how we recovered. We probably had about 6 machines lost, and we had 4 recovered that way using that, which is the only reason the recon, even though the recon piece, I understand exactly what you're saying, that recon actually provides some
This actually sounds like a really good discussion that can go on for a while. And I'm sorry, but this lady did have a question.
We use Casper Suite at our college, and I'm finding that with Casper Remote, we usually have 25 to 26 machines in a classroom. Let's just say I need to put in Adobe After Effects. The first 20 machines will install successfully, and maybe the last 5 will hang on that SSH connection indefinitely. And in certain cases, it'll revert to using Ditto. I wanted to know, I'm not really a networking person. What are some things I should have my switch guys and my networking guys check to make sure I don't have that problem in the fall when we have to refresh all of our machines?
That's a good question. Robert, do you think you can handle that one? Or?
No. So one thing I've run into with that, especially bigger packages like that, you may want to force it to use AFP instead of HTTP, especially if it's in that controlled environment. The machines are on, they're right there. So I would give that a try. But I'm sure there's other answers too.
Yeah, and one other way that you could handle that too is rather than using Casper Remote to push it out, you could, you could set up policies. Just create a policy that says, at midnight push it out to these 10 individual computers, and then at 3 a.m. push it out to the other 10. It could be, and I don't know, it could be a network saturation point. I would look at also how much RAM you have, and the big thing that a lot of people don't really do with Casper is learn about how to optimize Tomcat memory. There are knowledge base articles on that on their website, and I've seen it on many times where somebody will be complaining about performance, and it's like, okay, go into the database utility, take a look at what your settings are. Oh, you've got 4 gigs of RAM in your server, and you're allocating 4 to MySQL. This is not good. At some point, you're gonna, your server's gonna be sitting there spinning its wheels. So, RAM is incredibly cheap these days. But this could also be a network bandwidth issue. Again, I would potentially split it up into a couple of different groups. If you've got 25 in a classroom, do 13 at one time. Set up a policy to run at midnight when there's nothing else going in your network. set the other 12 to run at 3 a.m. and you should be covered.
You, sir, in the back.
We found that it actually runs faster when we do segments of like 7 as opposed to trying to do 25 at a time. At least every time I use Casper Remote, at 20 it actually falls over to one of our distribution points. And the backup distribution point starts pushing the next set of 20 from that one, then it'll fall over again to another backup distribution point. Starts pushing. We never got remote to actually push more than 20 at once, even after tweaking settings. Tweaking some of the network settings, if you right, it does run significantly faster with more RAM and, you know, making some adjustments, but not beating it every day with policies as opposed to trying to sit there and go directly with remote to more than like policy.
And is this something you do frequently, like every first Wednesday of the month or something like that? Do you have to push?
No,
You have to push it, or?
in the fall, well, not really in the fall, from July, second week in July to like the third week in August, where we have to re-image all of our classrooms. Some of them require an application, and we just try to make sure before we say that that room is done, that all those apps are in there.
Yeah, the policy seems to be the way to do it, because if it is a recurring thing, you can just keep that policy in there, and when you need to run it again, just go in and, you know, clear out the records that said those ran, and they'll just run again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, who's next? Okay.
So absent Casper or any other NVM solution, and not being too thrilled with Profile Manager, what are folks doing for 802.1x profiles in line?
We haven't.
I'm actually curious if other people are doing this, but we just have a web-based, it's like a PHP script it runs. They log in through their NetID, it configures it, downloads it, and then they can just run it. We use the same script for both iOS devices and Lion right now. So.
Yeah, or create a profile.
They're doing the same thing.
Push it through Puppet or something. That works. Who's the guy who's been doing a bunch of Puppet plus profile stuff? How?
You just use it to distribute the profiles,
Just on that note, I've also seen there's a project, somebody posted to the Mac list 3 months ago maybe, which was just, it's on Google Code. It's a project to, I think it might even use crankd, but it manages loading and unloading profiles from the directory.
Oh,
So
the Mac ops scripts, right?
it's not a Mac ops script, it's somebody else.
yeah, the Google guys did write that. The initial
Oh,
Puppet
yeah.
work I did is actually deploying that service and running it. It works. The problem I have with it is it doesn't always remove the profile when you remove it from the directory. So I ended up writing a good way to do it, just so I can always be sure that the profile will be removed. But it does work really well for just dropping profiles in the directory. And it's just a Python wrapper around the profiles utility.
Okay, and for those not familiar with it, Mackie refers to the Mac Enterprise mailing list, which is a fantastic mailing list for those working with Macs in the enterprise or large university or K through 12 environments. If you're not already a member, I highly encourage you to sign up. It's hosted by the good folks here at Penn State. It's a really good resource.
Just really quick, I want to make sure that people understand you can use the iPhone configuration utility still, right, to create iPhone profiles and then create a .mobile config file. So we want to make sure we're mentioning that piece, and that's where it's available on also Penn State's website, where people log in, they download it, they double-click it, and Lion is awesome for importing that profile in that way. Just to make sure we're and right, and also with profiles, separating your configurations out. So you have one for VPN, one for email, one for those is also a really good idea to separate them, not have them all in one profile.
And both System Image Utility and Deploy Studio support profiles, so just, yeah, a lot of ways to deliver.
Brian, you had a question?
We actually use a commercial solution for that. It's called CloudPath Express Connect. We have an open network set up. Kids, when they come on campus, or faculty staff use it too. They connect to the open wireless. It automatically redirects them to the CloudPath setup page, steps them through a couple of question and answer pages, and then it does everything automatically. And it has been bulletproof. And you can not only will it do the 802.1x, you can do push packages down with it and have it install, for instance, printer setups. So our Barrows is welcome to install. Cloud Path Express Connect, XPRESS.
User?
So you two case guys, you found a way to hack around its fairly poor ability to detect patches.
No. Yeah, Case is one of those things where we are a customer of Case, but then we also went out and bought Casper to handle our Mac management specifically. For our patching, it can sometimes take a couple scans before Case's built-in patch management will recognize that a patch has actually been installed. In general, it gets it right the first time, but you're right. Sometimes it does take multiple tries to figure that out. Unfortunately, I haven't found a fix for that. That's one of the reasons I bought Casper. Yeah. Did you have any different experience?
I was just going to say what you said.
Okay. Yeah. Case is a fantastic inventory tool on the Mac. That's all you need. It's a great tool. Next. Dell now. Yes.
Speaking of inventory, we use Casper Suite for our inventory when we have an issue. We manage and unmanaged machines, so if it's out on the floor, it's managed. If it's unmanaged, it's something that's maybe come back to us, person has left the company or whatever. But we struggle with issues of managed versus unmanaged with like hardware that's showing up but it hasn't been taken out of the box yet, or sometimes we have issues where like for license reporting in Casper Suite, it counts those unmanaged machines also, which I think they might be doing as a feature request. But I'm wondering if maybe Case is the answer to this, if other people are looking at their inventory this closely, and if so, what techniques they're using to keep track of it all.
I may be missing. What is your managed versus unmanaged model? Because generally with Casper, once it's on, I generally would consider it managed. So these are machines that you don't have the Casper agent on, or you do have it on, but you're just not applying any policies?
Sure. So the unmanaged ones are basically, they were in the system, they were out on the floor, but we've since reclaimed them for some reason, and because they're not out on the floor anymore, we unmanage them, so that way when we look at our managed machines, we have accurate, up-to-date info on exactly what's out there being used, what those numbers are, instead of saying, oh, we have 1,300 machines, but really there's only 1,000 out there. So that helps us keep the day-to-day stuff accurate.
So as a managed services provider, one of the things that we do, we sync Casper to our database that tracks all of our systems. We have a second database, basically. And that does billing and all that kind of stuff that you need to do when there's money changing hands.
Yeah.
And they sync. And when we remove a machine from one, it kicks it from the other, or if we remove a machine from the other, it kicks it from that. And then we use extension attributes to track a bunch of other stuff.
Okay.
Effectively.
Yeah, if you're using Casper and you have not used extension attributes that heavily, I highly encourage you to look into it because it can add a lot of information to your inventory that's not in the canned package.
And the API exposes them, so you can pull them basically via like a REST interface and parse them and do whatever you want.
So Ben, are you seeing it where machines that are unmanaged that may still have Creative Suite 5.5 installed are showing up as a used license?
Yes.
Okay, and what does JAMF have to say about that?
It sounded like there was one other client that was really interested in having this addressed.
Okay.
That was at the National Users Conference in November.
Mhm.
We haven't gone to 8.5.2 yet, so I don't know.
I didn't see anything in the release notes about that.
So I was going to reach out to them after this and see where they were at.
Yeah, because that sounds like the behavior should be what you expect, which is if the machine is unmanaged, because Bob the VP decided to replace his 13-inch MacBook Pro with a new MacBook Air, so now you got a 13 sitting in a drawer somewhere that's not actively being used, and even though it may have Creative Suite on it, you don't want it to count as a license, so that's the consideration.
You, sir.
If you guys can check your Twitter feeds, I put up the bones of a Google spreadsheet so we can make a comparison. It's publicly editable.
Okay. Yeah, and if you want to tap into the one that's out there now.
Oh, there is one now?
Yeah, I posted it last night, but it's, there's a link on there.
All right, well, that's even better.
Collaboration, I love it.
Is that on the Twitter feed too?
It is on the Twitter feed, probably 12 hours ago.
One more note on the managed versus unmanaged. I know in our environment, one of our challenges is Bob has his Mac, and Bob gets a new Mac, and we set it up, and our IT department doesn't own the systems. The individual departments own their own systems, but we manage them. So Bob has his new Mac. We've done all the transfer, all the data, everything, and then something happens with the old Mac, and maybe it's surplused, maybe it's shoved in a desk drawer, but we don't know because they never tell us. So we kind of go with we start to flag things that, hey, it hasn't checked in 45 days, which we want to know about that anyway. Why does this thing need 12 software updates? And it hasn't checked in. And then we start to, at 60 days, we start to, send the emails, and we find an email every single day until you respond is pretty effective. One email, whatever, stop spamming me. Yeah, so.
Using big honking text.
Oh, yes. Red, bold.
HTML flashing.
Yes.
Well, we've had it too, where machines have, gone back in, and then, somebody's handed them out to somebody else, and we don't know where it is.
Yeah.
So then there's a policy that does the nag, like every hour.
Yeah.
It says, please, email this person with who has this laptop,
Yeah, we have, we check to see who was the last user that logged in, and we have some magic that look, we look, well, that computer used to belong to Bob over here, but I see Doug's logging in like every single day for the past 3 months. I wonder if that's owned by Doug now.
Who's next?
How would you set up Mac updates on 10.68 no record server?
You have 10.7 clients?
Not yet.
For a software update server?
Yeah, currently I was put in a situation where the previous Mac administrator just abruptly quit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm busy trying to untangle a lot of things, and management is now asking, because of the whole thing of they don't want users individually doing updates on their Mac because they claim it's a whole lot of load on the network. So they want something similar, like on the Windows side, like a SUS server.
Yeah. And what management tools do you have on the systems?
Right now, just Deploy Studio.
Okay.
Do you have a Mac OS X server available to you internally?
Yeah.
Is that running the software update service?
No.
It can. That's a suggestion that is, you can't really, through that, you can't force it. There's no kind of management and software update server to say, besides somehow scheduling it on the client machines, to check for updates at certain intervals, but you can at least host those updates internally and approve or, not approve certain updates through Mac OS X server.
Yeah, so you've got a 10.6.8 server, and you may have 10.7 clients. So a couple things. First of all, are these clients bound to the Active Directory or Open Directory in any way?
That's going to be the next step. They want
Okay.
They want everything bound by AD, but the issue is the previous Mac administrator had most of the users, faculty and staff, have local accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
what I've learned from these sessions, before you can even bind the machine to AD for these users, you're going to have to migrate their local accounts to the home directory.
Right.
After.
Yeah, you want to
After you
Yeah,
bind,
you want to
yeah.
bind them and then.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's already.
Okay, so the thought. So I've set this up in a lot of client environments, and where I've got a 10, and I've used 10.6.8 server. There is actually a knowledge base article that tells you how to modify a plist so that it can serve updates for 10.7 as well, and that does work, and it works well. What I did, because there's always the issue, especially if they're portable systems that will leave the campus, and so that if you redirect all to your internal software update server and then they leave campus, they may not be able to get updates. So some people hack DNS to make it look like it's going to the internal, like it's going to Apple's server, which is point at your internal server. Another way you could do it, put your 10.6.8 software update server in a DMZ, open port 8088 to the world. So, you're going to yourupdateserver.organization.edu. When you're on the local LAN, you're fine. When you're, at home, it's still pulling updates, but it's probably not going to be that significant of a load.
So when you don't have any remote management tools, do you have any
So yeah,
software update space dash all.
Yeah.
You could-
I don't have.
And defaults right, you can.
As far as making packages, I mean, I'm gonna go back and try to convince them to at least get Composer, so I can make packages.
You know, you're an educational institution, right? Okay. JAMF offers huge, tremendous discounts on educational, like basically you pay the maintenance and you get the software. So that you should really look into that.
That was our foot in the door.
You can also do kind of the carrot approach. I'm a big fan of the carrot approach, especially if you've got unmanaged systems. You know, software update, that's easy. Hey, you know, do you want to be able to do your software updates a heck of a lot faster? Run this script. You know, send them email them an Apple script, or make a package with make a payload-free package with a script in it. Run this. This will set your software update server to our internal thing. Guarantee you'll have 10 times faster downloads. Things will apply faster. You know, it's a good carrot. Then you can hide other things in there too. No. Yeah.
You had mentioned about forcing updates on clients. The server functionality doesn't offer that.
Right.
That just gives you a local cache.
Right.
If you're looking to actually force updates onto the client, if you look into Munki, you can actually use it to just do Apple software updates. There's a couple flags that you can set that will just look to that, and you can specify it to look at your local server. So it can just handle updates. And by default, I think Munki checks once an hour randomized or so. So you can get updates up to basically an hour.
And you can also use it to bypass the giving your
Uses admin rights, right?
Yeah, that too. That's kind of what it's there for.
Currently, today though, Munki can't do a forced install of Apple software updates, but
But it can't pop up.
of course it will prompt them and ask them. You know,
If it's prompting them every hour for it.
yeah, they're probably going to do it.
That they're going to call the help desk and be like, make this stop. But
Run your updates.
yeah.
And once you get these systems managed, you know, you can just start pushing it. You know, and we do a very regular schedule. For us, it's the first Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. You're getting updates. And, you know, our communication is, if you don't want to be interrupted on the first Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m., run your updates prior to that. You know, we're asking you to run your software updates. If you don't, we're going to run them for you first Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. The day of the week doesn't matter, just, you know, pick a day and stick to it. And it becomes a regular thing and they're not surprised by it.
I'm a huge fan of DNS Hijack myself. I like setting it up so that it's completely transparent that when they're on our campus, softwarescan.apple.com actually goes to our internal update server. So as long as the machines are on campus, I don't have to touch the clients. They'll go to my update server, which will be an internal cache. But then when they leave campus, because all of our faculty take their machines home, nothing breaks. And I find, especially if they ever have to go to the Genius bar for anything, if they ever have a problem, they decide to ask Apple instead of us for help. And if we have any kind of custom settings about Apple software updates, the Genius comes along and stomps through the whole thing. And that just gets old real quick. So doing it transparently, it's a little bit more work the first time, but as long as you can convince your DNS guys to just put in one line of DNS that says softwarescanapple.com now redirects to this server, you're golden. And it's after that, it just doesn't take any effort. It just works.
No, I'll offer a contrary opinion to that, and that is if you run well, okay, if you run into a situation where an update will break something that you know that's mission critical, like I had something that at a previous employer where Java updates were bad because there was a workflow client which was Java which did not work with the newer version of Java. In your scenario of the DNS hijack, that'd be great as long as they're on the local LAN. They go home and run software update, it updates Java, and now they're broken.
Well, just don't implement anything that'll
Yeah, that's.
Well, I actually turn off automatic updating for software update so that they don't, unless they do it manually, it won't pop up at home.
Right, and I do the same thing, but it was just.
Yeah, there's only so much we can do to.
Right, it's a balance. If you find yourself in that scenario, and again, I find this is the other thing that I find people getting really granular about what updates are enabled in software update, and my approach to it is generally let it pull the updates down, don't auto activate them until let a week go by or so. Yeah, kind of check online because Apple's done this twice this year. I think it was the non-combo 10.7.2 to 10.7.3 update had all those core UI errors, And then the 10.6.8, one of the security updates, and this one actually bit me, and I can't remember what happened. I think I forgot to turn automatic enabling off. So like 2 days after the update came out, a Thursday night patch cycle hit. Everybody got the update, and the update broke. It broke the Rosetta.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting point. Who's doing automated regression testing?
You.
I'm doing regression testing, but it's not probably in the automated fashion.
Spreadsheet, and you just go through and.
Well, in my case, it's basically I'm on my patch server. I've got machines that just check in every hour, and if something breaks there, I guess that is more automated than I would think. But yeah, basically mine is I've got machines set to patch every hour, and if they break, then I know something went wrong.
And I don't think, and just to be clear, I don't think any of us up here are saying don't patch.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather have all my systems pulling down the Apple updates the day they come out than none of my systems patching. So patching is really important, especially the latest Java patches.
Right. If you have hard now, I mean, you can just have a package that just triggers the Apple software update all and just pulls them all down. If people were looking for just something simple to push out those patches, that would be really easy.
Or the send Unix, send Unix, yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head here, I'm putting you on the spot, do you have a good article, a good knowledge article on setting up those DNS entries?
Yes, actually, there's one on macosxhints.com where someone, it's a couple years old, but the basic idea is never, I mean, they've never changed their server address for it.
Right.
It's still softwarescan.apple.com, it's still the same thing. So if you look on there for, I think it was called DNS Redirect for Apple software update. If you look through macosxhints.com, you'll find something about it there. If you come talk to me afterwards, I can probably point you to the link. But it just talks about what you have to do, add a DNS entry for this one address, point it to your own server, and then in that one server, just set up Apache to respond to softwarescanapple.com, and it will behave the right way. It didn't really take a lot of setup for us. My network guy and I spent about 30 minutes doing it, and a little bit of trial and error, and it was easy.
You do need to exclude your update server, else it's going to keep putting that.
Yes, you need to make sure that the update server does not check itself, because then you won't really have a lot of success.
Right.
It'll open up a wormhole, which will suck the integrity.
Right, yeah.
We kind of do what Rob does. You know, we just wait a week or so and look online and see if anyone's complaining about updates, and if they mostly seem successful, we kind of enable most of them.
The cooling off period.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Uh, Does anybody have a free or cheap way that they like of doing this for Windows clients?
WSUS?
Yeah.
That requires a gigantic Windows server, which we do not have.
A little Dell 410 or something, like, it doesn't have to be that expensive for the Windows clients. It can be pretty cheap.
Yeah, we're running ours on a VM.
Yeah.
Okay. And
We
do
run
you-
ours on a VM too,
Do
actually.
you not need CALs for all your users for that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
If you do anything against a Windows server, you need CAL.
Well, I mean,
Unless, yeah, you're IIS and you're on the border.
So there's no open source equivalents?
not that I've seen, I would definitely probably say there probably is.
There may be.
Yeah, I just haven't Googled for it.
FOG, I don't know what it stands for.
Well, we use FOG for imaging, but we don't use FOG
I don't
for.
think FOG does
Yeah.
update service.
Yeah, FOG's more like the version of Deploy Studio.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
FOG is wonderful. I used that for imaging purposes once, and I can't say anything about it, but.
If you feel really, really masochistic and you have a lot of spare time, you could set up something complicated with Squid proxy caching. But I don't recommend that. We tried that once and we gave up on that after it died the 8th time in a row in like 2 weeks. But you could theoretically set up a Linux server that runs Squid, which is just a proxy server, and then set up a gigantic cache that just caches all downloads from specific locations, and then it'll just automatically cache anything over a given port and then serve it back to your users. That requires a lot of client configuration. It requires a lot of server configuration. It requires a lot of suffering. So I can't say I recommend it, but it is a free alternative.
But if you wanted to block one, you could just poison.
Absolutely. You could just, yeah.
Yeah.
You could ruin all of your users' lives that way.
Yeah, we've done that with the App Store to block specific apps off the App Store, and it's a world of hurt. It works. But it's,
It works. Can't say much more than that, though.
Something else I wanted to mention about the Apple software update server, if any of you are running it and you haven't rebuilt it recently, you have to, because Apple's installer certificate expired. So basically,
Package apocalypse.
Package apocalypse, they call it online. Basically, every installer package from Apple that was released before that date suddenly became invalid. So Apple has a knowledge base article on how to go through and rebuild your software update server for that reason.
Mention
Although
the
you-
Casper server.
You don't.
I don't use Casper, so you can.
You don't. Apple says you need to remove all the downloads, and you don't. You just need to remove all the catalogs, because if you remove all the downloads, it's going to suck down all, how many gigabytes of.
Certificate in the packages. Though?
Yeah, but it'll download the new ones.
Okay. And, this is, I hope, well-known knowledge, Casper has a free virtual machine that can act as an Apple software update server and a NetBoot server. And it's free. So.
Yeah, it's an open source, it's built on Ubuntu. You can put it into your VMware infrastructure, or, I think you can convert it over to Parallels if you're running that. And in general, it just works. So if you just need to stand up a software update server in a hurry and you don't even want to stand it up on OS 10 server, take a look at JAMF solution because it's pretty good.
It's also running VirtualBox too.
It is Reposado, yeah.
But you can run.
VirtualBox.
Yeah,
And then it's
it runs in VirtualBox, yeah.
So from the session yesterday or the day before, profile managers was taking the place of workgroup manager?
Starting to go down that path. I wouldn't necessarily say it's 100%.
Yeah, where's the Apple guy?
So
let's pull out our crystal ball.
Workgroup managers, MCX through Workgroup Manager still kind of works in 10.7. Not everything works. So if you're used to doing lots of really complex or detailed setups of MCX, some people have reported there are some things that that some things are just gone.
There are
settings
some
gone.
keys that aren't
just
quite
don't
the
show up
same
anymore.
in Snow Leopard Inline.
But MCX does still apply in 10.7. I've had success with it.
There's no way to take it away because that's how
Profile-
Profile
yeah,
Manager
Applied
works.
Yeah.
Profile Manager just puts the keys in MCX.
Well, the major ones that we deal with are the dot printing, and we have a logon script that runs just to count how many logins are going onto each machine. So if those three work, that makes my life easier. Otherwise, I have to go back and we have to rethink whether we're gonna, when we do upgrade to 10.7, whether I'm gonna sit there and do this all over again manually, or we're gonna just go into the Casper application, which I would prefer to use.
Those three definitely work in 10.7.
But are you doing them, once, often,
Doesn't matter. They definitely work in 10.7 through managed preferences.
Did you say
Right, through Workgroup Manager.
Through Workgroup.
Yeah, we
I'm
manage
sorry.
printing, big time, yeah.
Well, most
Yeah.
It's still not very effective.
Right.
The things you can do inside of the Profile Manager box are easy. It actually makes it easier, but if you need to leave that box, that's when it becomes a little more complex.
I mean, and like Charles said, that's how profiles are being applied anyways, so it's not like they're going to rip that away, at least we hope not anytime soon, unless they develop a new way to implement the profiles. But the one thing that's important to note is if you use Profile Manager, things in profiles are essentially always at the always level of persistency.
Not essentially, they are always.
They are always at the always level of
Yeah.
consistency. So in Workgroup Manager, if you manage the doc once, if you want to put it on the right side for your users once, so just so it's there for them.
Just want to push.
We're very controlling. We put the doc on there for the semester, and whatever they do when they log out is going back the way we want it. The same thing with the printing. If you're in a certain classroom, those two printers are the printers that you're using. You're not using the printer in the classroom down the hall because the teacher lets you put in recycled paper. So we're very
If you're doing always, you could look at profiles, but MCX still works.
okay.
Deep freeze may be something for you too.
Yeah, that is also a good idea. Deep freeze might also be a good suggestion.
Freeze on top of Workgroup.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's how it's set up.
Hardcore.
Now let's throw Casper MCX in there and we'll have the complete.
Admin, I have nothing to do with, we're gonna do it this way.
Buying a crowbar might be cheaper, just beat the users. You're probably already aware if you're using MCX in large amounts, but just be aware that especially in 10.6.8 still, and in some cases in 10.7, not all preferences that can be managed by MCX acknowledge the always setting. Some things don't necessarily always set. So you can change some things and tell MCX to do it always, and it just won't. They'll still be able to change it.
But Profile Manager isn't
Well,
about
yeah.
MCX, it's about keys.
Yes, yeah.
And so you just bind the defaults key, you pop it into Profile Manager. So, I mean, whether it's Microsoft Office serial number or registration information that you're pushing out, or it works. I have yet to have a single place where I found the right key to use that it didn't work. Anytime that profiles weren't working for me, it was my fault for not using the right keys, because like I was looking at a manifest as opposed to a defaults domain, if that makes sense.
I don't know if you guys have heard differently, but our SE had said that there was a guarantee within Apple engineering that the MCX would work through 10.7, but that there's no such thing going forward to 10.8. So, I mean, it's probably common knowledge, but they had said that there was actually a definite guarantee in 10.7 that it would be that backward compatibility. But.
Okay, now it's live. And just to go back to the printers thing, Casper is fantastic at managing printers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But Casper's using local MCX for a lot of that type of stuff, and like all these questions about is MCX going away? Well, it can't,
Yeah.
The workgroup manager interface might go away.
Yeah.
That's possible. Just like a lot of the GUI tools went away, for managing a server from 10.6 to 10.7.
I would argue Workgroup Manager has slowly been going away on its own.
Yeah. There are many times I wished it would go away.
Yeah, for folks using MCX, one thing that Apple has kind of made clear with its roadmap is that profiles are the way forward. And as was mentioned, profiles are basically, you don't get the once, often, always. Profiles are always. So, if you need to take a look at that for your own environments, just keep that in mind. The profiles are Apple's way forward.
And Apple's argument about if you need it once would be, well, just go to System Preferences and remove the preference, which then removes the data that you pushed through the preference. So now you've got to
redo it again.
Scripting.
Tim, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm just curious if anyone's looked at in moving from anything from any policies from MCX to profiles, that it's been an issue that there doesn't seem to be any option for by-host reps in Profile Manager. I'm curious if anyone is.
We've scripted all of that for now.
Yeah.
No other way around it.
That basically was.
I don't think that, it seems like they've been getting more and more away from that anyways. But
Yeah.
Did everybody hear that? By-host preferences for a user for a particular individual piece of
We use
machinery.
that a lot for things like color profiles.
Yeah. Bluetooth screensaver, that kind of thing. Who has the next question? You, sir.
Profile Manager and iOS devices, what's a realistic number to manage?
On a Mac Mini server?
Or a Mac Pro?
According to what you're trying to do, about 300 or 5. So anywhere from 2 or 3 to 300. Profile Manager, it runs it's a unicast model pretty much. So if you set a profile for 10 people, it's going to tee them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not going to do multiple ones at once. So that can be kind of frustrating. It doesn't do apps, so that can be kind of frustrating. In some cases, it's not really appropriate for more than a couple users. But if all you're trying to do is have a way to wipe devices for your users, a portal for them, and push out minor things every now and then, I've taken it past 300. So.
About 500. We will have about 500 and 3 campuses.
You could divide them up into 2 minis. And the Mac Pro is not any faster than the Mini. It tends to be more of a how many tasks can you do concurrently issue than,
If you had 3 campuses, the bandwidth is okay, but 3 campuses would be better than 3 minis than 1 Mac Pro.
That's probably how I would carve it.
About the same price, too.
Yeah, it will not be any faster whatsoever. It's more concerned about RAM also. So, but the bandwidth just can't, the bandwidth for APNS cannot be more than whatever your internet connection is, right? So, but RAM is better, so more RAM if you're going to put hundreds of users. But other than that, there's no difference between a Mac Pro.
I wouldn't think SSD would make a difference at all.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. Just don't rate it.
The interface can be a bit frustrating too, especially if you've got lots of profiles and lots of setups. It's kind of, moving a bunch of things in, and so.
KISS.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, yes.
And as far as that goes, depending on what your mobile device management needs are, I've talked to folks who they have Exchange, and their main concern is if the device is lost, I want to be able to wipe it. But you have Exchange, and you can set it up with ActiveSync, and you can wipe it through Exchange. You don't necessarily need mobile device management in that case because you already have it. You're just running it through your Exchange server. So just focus on. Sorry, I'm interrupting. I've just keep basically before you go look at mobile device management, take a look at what you're actually trying to accomplish, and then at that point, once you have a firm idea, then go out and take a look at solutions. Because if you just need one thing, it may not make sense to go out and spend a bunch of money on a fully featured solution. But then again, you get a fully featured solution for $30. So
when you talk about number of profiles, is this, we're not talking about one per user, are we? Is it more like teacher, student?
Group-based.
Yeah. Okay, but it's not, I mean, I have 500 users. Yeah, they don't each need their own profile.
No,
And you might want to never use the everyone.
Yeah.
Just saying.
You might also want to split the profiles up into things like, here are my rules. You have to have password this, you have to do that. And then you may want to set up, a profile for rules, a profile for,
For
the
each
other
payload
thing.
in the configurator, so you go for wireless. Okay, so here's my wireless profile, which applies to not everyone, but just about everyone, virtually teachers, students, probably creator groups. And then here's one for my email configuration. Here's one for
energy
restrictions. Yeah.
And that applies with MCX too. And there was a thread on Mac Enterprise about this recently, where a lot of people tend to do their management based on this is Lab 208, Lab 209, Lab 210. But a different way of thinking about it is make a group for each preference, right? And then put your computers in all of those groups, right? And so if you, well, it makes it simple though. If you want to remove one preference, logical groups of preferences like doc, and so that you can kind of move machines more modularly around.
If you were going to use Munki as your directory service, maybe, but.
Just different ways of thinking about how to organize your preferences.
Lots of ways to do it.
You can do it by payload or do it by group of users or something like that.
I can say do it. I've seen places that did it by payload, and I've never seen anyone do it right. Does anyone do it by payload, or does everyone do it by group or device group or whatever?
I've started to move into the payload approach.
But you're using JAMF, aren't you? Local and
Well, not
so
at
that
the
doesn't count.
Yeah. Not the one. Not at the one. Yes. Not for MDM.
Again, we're using JAMF, fairly happy with it. And a lot of the stuff that I've been hearing when you talk about other platforms for management, they do for the PCs and Macs, it seems like the Mac is just like an add-on thing.
The stepchild of the.
I'm just curious about, because I hear a lot of people that I work with at in schools talking about that are in mixed environments. It's absolute. And I'm curious how Absolute fares with this, because they seem to have a very wide feature set. There seems to be a lot going on with it. Not that I'm looking to leave Casper, but I'm curious as to what the other.
I've used Absolute, and it's a good solution. The one thing that it does, that Casper has, that it does not have, is policy management. It doesn't do MCX. But I mean, it's one of those things that I think it's actually a little better at pushing software and pushing patches than Casper is. Because essentially with Absolute Manage, you have its own built-in patch management service where it downloads the patches and you can accept them or reject them. So you don't have to stand up a separate Apple software update server or Reposado to manage that kind of stuff. And it does resumable downloads. So if a download machine gets put to sleep, you don't have to do anything special in order to get it to resume. It's a nice package. I like it.
So we're a reseller for both, and I find that Absolute, while it doesn't have everything that JAMF has, it is customer installable. So it doesn't require a jump start from a third-party company, and it's also the learning curve. I mean, you can have someone up and running on that in hours.
Is the iOS management as robust?
Well, MDM is MDM. They're all going to be the same except for Profile Manager, which is young and catching up to everybody else. So
Yeah, I mean,
no one has all the features of JAMF yet because JAMF now has the whole iBooks distribution thing. And
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that basically I haven't found anything that I can't do with Casper. And so I kind of set that as my bar. There's Casper, and I find if you have money but no time, Casper's your answer. If you have a lot of time and very little money, that's when you start looking at the open source things.
not that Absolute's open source.
Yeah, right. But Munki and the other things like that. And no flies on Munki or anything, and that's good stuff. But for us, it was we had more money than we had time.
Right. And there's like I said, the learning curve is the biggest part of those.
Well, the more full featured the tools are, the more what the learning curve is going to be.
And just to make a follow-up for systems management tools, and I did see your question. Sorry, I just wanted to say this. One thing you may want to take a look at when evaluating systems management tools is take a look at how fast they're able to support a new operating system. Tools like Casper, they were ready day one.
Before day one.
Before day one. Absolute Manage, they had it ready, they had their support ready, I think, within a few weeks, maybe. Other tools where Macs are kind of the add-on will take months. I mean, with Case.
Case took months.
I keep beating up on Case, but Case is actually a good example here. Case just started supporting 10.7 patching with a 10.7 compatible agent in February.
10.7.2.
10.7.2 compatibility, yes. And
Yeah, I'd like to talk to Mac support. Yeah, Bob's not here today.
Yeah.
Let me leave a note. Let me leave a note on his basement door.
But yeah, I would say that just if you're evaluating that kind of tool, people are saying, we're using this on the Windows side. Maybe we should also use it to manage our Macs. Really take a look at how fast it took them to support the newest Mac operating system. If it took them months, they're not serious about supporting you.
Well,
they're serious about selling it to you, but they're not serious about actually supporting the platform.
I would argue if you manufacture non-Apple computers, you're never going to be serious about.
That's a good point. Kbox is now owned by Dell, so that's actually good.
If you're looking at cross-platform, and actually, I'm going to make another plug. That spreadsheet actually was designed to evaluate Casper versus Absolute. That was where we started because we saw these two solutions and we had the money, but we didn't have the time. So we were looking at these two. I think if you're looking at cross-platform, Absolute's probably one of the best in that area. If you're looking for single platform, if you're doing we were doing SCCM on the Windows and we were looking for a comparable solution on the Mac, it's hard to beat JAMF, and I would echo that too.
Well, JAMF also has the plugin that he did.
Well, so does Absolute.
And at Penn State, we also just another plug for JAMF.
We do
Stop
love
smiling.
JAMF.
Yeah, JAMF is one we would go for. Actually, it was one that we were talking. We brought them in. They did a great job of coming in the presentation on a local MacAdmins community meeting. I wanted to try and push JAMF as much as possible, and then IBM Big Fix came in. It's a cross-platform. It works okay on the Mac, but it was delayed as well for support, and we were I wish we were doing JAMF. So we had to go with Big Fix because it's a cross-platform. We have more PCs than Macs, and that's why it won. So JAMF is a good solution.
Okay. Delayed but not denied. You had a question, sir.
Just a follow-up. We've used Absolute for about 6 years and managing about 2,000 mobile devices. And the whole thing about pushing out packages and the reliability of that, I mean, you have middle school, high school students on, off, all day long, and it just delivers the packages. Single server, single server on, one network, multiple buildings. It just works. But there are some things that are a little bit frustrating with some of the interface kinds of stuff because you're moving around a lot of different places. But I think it's a great product. You can integrate with help desk just like you can with Casper. But if you need that cross-platform, if you're looking for a Windows solution, it does that piece too. My question that I had was, you had mentioned Crashplan as one of the areas of expertise, and looking at best practice for, let's say you've got a faculty member, they're using Crashplan, whether it's hosted offsite or onsite, they're going to get new hardware that now you put your base image on, just sort of best practice thinking through that, because, moving
Sure.
away from the portable home directories and syncing up using Crashplan instead, but now I got a new hardware, and they got.
So first,
But the Crashplan API doesn't have any restored functionality, so is that what the question's getting at? Or?
Well, if you install the thing, you install the agent, you can.
Oh, you mean just from a deployment?
Right, like I'm deploying new hardware, I've imaged it, but I'm just wondering if anybody's worked around.
Sure. We don't use Crashplan to move a user from computer A to computer B. We look at backup as it's backup. It's the, oh damn, I didn't mean to do that. Crashplan. It's the Crashplan. Also, one of our policies is we exclude movies and music, and that's just a policy from on high, so it's just the way it is. So, my Mac users would be sad if they lost their iTunes library. But all that said, some of the things that we do when we're doing I'm moving you from old Mac to new Mac, when you either rebuild a computer or you set up a new computer for a user, Crashplan, when you install it, assigns a GUID, so this nice long string. And so for at least 4 or 5 seconds or so, you're going to have a GUID from your old computer and a GUID on your new computer. Now, if you've used Migration Assistant or something and moved all your data to that new computer, what we end up doing is we change the GUID of that new computer to the old GUID. Because that way, well, I've already backed up this data. I don't want to send it up the wire again. The new version of Crashplan is going to have, I don't remember the term. I think it's called
it's like adopt a computer.
Adopt a computer.
Like
and
you'll open the client.
I heard about that and I went, thank you. That's just perfect. It's like, yes, this was my old computer. Now it's my new computer, and just do that.
So, because we were trying to figure out how to, do we log in with our local tech account and then try to restore their stuff back? Because you don't necessarily want to restore all their plist stuff back while they're logged in.
And we do, when we do this, when we deliver it, the user has to log into Crashplan again. That's just kind of the last button to push. User has to log in.
There's a big caveat to that, which is if they're using private keys instead of passwords, then that is not going to work.
Okay.
That's been our experience. We can redo the GUID, but they have to have the key. So if we haven't backed up the key, then all of a sudden we can't use that.
Yes.
You can tell them that they can't use keys, by the way, by policy.
Yeah.
One note on backup, because we deployed over 1,000 MacBook Pros from 4 to 12 students. And we were looking at various backup solutions, bandwidth consideration, cost considerations. We gave every kid and faculty member a 500 gig hard drive and let them manage their own backups via time machine, because when they go out into their everyday lives, they don't have all of us worrying about their backups of all of us.
If they pay Crashplan $40 a year, they do.
Yeah.
If they pay Crashplan $40
And Crashplan,
500 gig drive, theoretically.
Crashplan and Time Machine are similar, but they're really different in terms of what you target. You can't do a bare metal restore via Crashplan.
Although it's on the roadmap now.
Oh, okay.
It is now finally on the roadmap.
And we choose, again, this is just what we choose. We back up /users. We found it was a lot less overhead to not have to look through all the operating system stuff. We have a very good build process. I can recreate the operating system, the applications in a couple hours. I don't care about those things. I care about your data. Time Machine's really slick. I mean, especially built in, and you can migrate data from a Time Machine. It's slick, but there's more overhead to it. And you can't manage it. So how do you know if little Billy is actually plugging in that hard drive?
Well, you can script
And
that they need to take.
users don't care about backup until they have to restore.
I will say that I don't trust Time Machine personally, just because I have personally lost files that way. But it just missed files here and there, and never any indication that it wasn't completing successfully. And
Recent OSs, because 10.5 was a traitor.
10.6, not in 10.7, but in 10.6. So I use Crashplan personally and love it. I mean, it's super hands-off. It just runs and.
Yeah. I have a couple of users who do a hybrid where they use Time Machine, but they actually exclude /users, and they just use it for their operating
Other
system.
stuff.
So when it's time to do a software update, they update it, or they do a Time Machine, then they do apply the software update, but they allow Crashplan to back up their documents and data.
I'm probably the poster child for backup because at my old job we still used Retrospect to back up the users folder. Sans, of course. Yeah, I know. On Windows too. To tape. Okay. Yeah. I never. Not that I ever actually did a restore from it, mind you, but.
That is exactly why they were crashed.
But. So I was backing up my users folder that way. I had a Crashplan account to back up my stuff that way. I have a time capsule at home, so I got 3 backups.
Yeah. For my own personal use, I do belt and suspenders. I have Time Machine backups, and then I have Crashplan. Crashplan's my offsite. Time Machine's essentially my fast backup. Crashplan, because it's heading out to Minnesota or wherever the heck the data center is, that's kind of my slow backup. But it's nice to have more than one option.
And of course, you can back up locally with Crashplan as well.
Yes, you can.
Multiple destinations.
Yep.
I will say that in our experience with 250 faculty and staff, we also give them out backup drives, and realistically, the users just don't take the effort, despite numerous reminders and constant suggestion and encouragement, and in some cases that $30 crowbar. They just don't back up manually the way that they really should. And the more you have to rely on your users to do it on their own, it's just not going to happen. If you don't have some kind of automated system, we're going to start moving now to an automated system, just because asking the users to take their laptops home once a month and plug in this small little orange lacy rubber drive with this one black cable into the right spot, no, not the Ethernet port, they just don't do it. Or they say, okay, I can't figure out how to plug in the backup.
You show me.
You, sir, with the orange lanyard with the camera, you had your hand up the longest. Sorry.
Well, first of all, I would say with Time Machine, if it's a faculty home and set it up on a time capsule or something like that, that's annoying to support. But once it's set up, it just works, and that's the only way to make it work. If Time Machine isn't just going to start
Until the time capsule blows up.
Well, yeah, there is that.
And that's never happened.
The newer 1 and 2 terabyte ones I've not blown up, but I've killed 2 of the other ones.
I think we need to mention one thing really quickly, though, that's important. Crashplan can be for free if you have your own machine running it and it can accept inbound connections. I did this at home. I've got a crazy setup, too. I gave up on Time Machine because I was doing it back from the network to a disk image. Those disk images kept getting corrupt. And after 5 times of that happening and me losing data and saying, oh, well, delete, start all the way over, I said, screw it, I moved Crashplan. I've got a home server. It's just actually running on a 10.6.8 server, and it's Crashplan running on that machine, backing itself up to 2 different Drobos. Yes, I know, I'm excessive. But then my home machines also can back up to it for free as one destination, and I also paid for their other services because I believe in it so much on off-site when I'm around here. I'm not going through home. I'm backing up to them when I go home. It backs up for free there. So you don't have to pay for Crashplan unless you use their service to store your data.
Whose company has policies not to back up the endpoint? Anybody?
Google.
No, because there is that's a legitimate thing if you choose just not to do it and tell your users you must copy it to your network drive or whatever.
Yeah.
Google is that way.
We attempted to do that, and there was, because we had been doing it for years, and somebody from on high said, "Why are we doing this? No one else is doing this. Why are we doing this? We should stop doing this. It costs money." There's
pitchforks and torches and
so we're now using Mozy Pro, which doesn't work for certain people who have very large data sets. So we have a mix of Time Machine and people on Windows with external hard drives using whatever software came with the hard drives.
Whose companies have written policies mandating backups on the endpoints? So if you want it to happen, that's step one. Get your CIO. Get your CIO to say, yes, our data is important to us. We recognize that data is money.
You, sir, blue shirt in the back, you've been waiting very patiently.
Thank you. We've been talking a lot about Crashplan. Has anyone else experienced the problem upgrading to 3.2 enterprise?
Has anyone not experienced problems with 3.2?
Didn't work, and the support who's normally very prompt and responsive has been virtually silent on that ticket.
Yeah, we have the same experience. They pulled the group, so if you go to their website, it's unavailable. So
Yeah,
You were saying LDAP was a problem.
So
we're not even using them.
Yeah. So if you have LDAP, it doesn't work.
I know they got slammed. They got slammed for support, is what I heard, because they were like weeks behind. Within 24 hours, you can pay memberships. It's like the same thing. I had the exact same thing, and I had to email when I was putting them. I ran out of net memory on mine. The Crashplan menu bar. This may not be the same problem you had. But, menu bar would launch and immediately quit. So I set the system log entry out and I said, "Oh, you're out of memory. Change this one value in this other file." Okay, fine. I did, and it worked. But it took a while to get back, and then
Probably retail support's better than the enterprise support.
Oh, yeah. So
Because
prior.
We call the enterprise support, and they're just like, you get nothing.
So maybe the lesson here in this case is prior to doing your update on your enterprise servers, call them beforehand and get them queued up. Yeah.
Or again, that's where things like the MacE list and just kind of checking the online reputation of things is probably.
Listen for the screams.
Yeah, because like I've managed Crashplan environment of 100 users, and like the admin console, I'll log in, it'll show me all the users, but all their data is 0. You know, but I know they're backing because I get emails that tell me how much they've backed up. So I'm getting emails that tell me this stuff, but the administrative interface is totally broken.
But we still love Crashplan.
We do. It's a great product, but wait for the fixes.
Yeah, they'll fix the support issue because they just got like 50 million in venture capital.
Yeah, see that's the problem. They're at a company. It's a growth curve, and they're like doing this right now. But the problem, as you know, as any company that loses substantial growth, is you have to find qualified people, you have to train them, come up to speed, and they're kind of stuck in that.
And they're in Minneapolis, and it's hard to get people to move to. I live there, you know. Like, it's cold.
Okay, we're coming into we're under 10 minutes now, so I'd like to see if we can get as many questions in as we can. So, Blim Visible in the back. Like you only just want to back up like one folder and exclude all the rest?
Make that one folder the whole hard drive.
Actually, you know, there is a crazy trick that I actually managed to pull when backing up a 10.5 server onto a Linux network share, where if you create the sparse bundle ahead of time and set a specific quota, and then you just set a whole bunch of different privacy settings in the time machine backup, you can kind of get that functionality. It's a dirty hack. It really is a dirty hack, but it does kind of get you where you want to go. I don't recommend it, but it's there.
Yeah, Time Machine is more built for, I want you to back up everything. It may be that for what you want to do, use another tool, something specific like...
a script with Ditto.
Yeah, script with Ditto or ChronoSync or... Yeah.
Would be a great way to do that.
Yeah, so just take a look at using another tool that gives you that same automatic functionality, but it will back up just what you want. Yes, sir.
We have tons of clients on both.
We're Pro-E. So.
Pro-E tends to be updated a little slower.
Yes.
Well, I like to think they're more conservative when it comes to Pro-E.
that is their mantra. That is actually their mantra.
I mean, they use Pro-E internally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not using Crashplan Central at all, then I would just use Pro-E in almost every case, personally.
You, sir, in the green shirt in the back.
I was just wondering, we're looking at purchasing Casper, and it's been great hearing the love fest for it this week. I was just wondering, and I know there's Casper people in the room, so if you have opinion or whatever, can anybody say anything bad about it? Are there any things I should watch out for, gotchas, annoyances, whatever?
So damn friendly.
There's one guy over there.
I hate it doesn't make me coffee.
We have one in the back.
You can script that.
The issue we have, which is a feature request that's been in for a while, is a little more control over your admin rights to your, like if you give a tech the ability to push packages, they can push packages to every computer in your inventory. You can't limit them to just a subset.
I have one, and this is something I feature requested, and I don't think I'd say it's a negative because it's a feature request. Maybe they do it, maybe they don't. But I would like historical context behind CPU and RAM utilization and other monitoring features. So like if I need to replace a bunch of MacBooks because they're getting a little long in the tooth, I'd like to be able to prove it by pointing at a number on a spreadsheet and showing someone and saying you have to replace your crap. You know, so I would like historical context. And so far we're like trying to grab extension attributes and like build an array and dump it in there, and then we're like, okay, that sucks. So we're gonna build a separate table and dump all the data in there and try to track. But things like Kaseya, like more different types of tools can do that. So, but that's more of a monitoring thing, you know, than a policy thing.
So the two biggest gripes I have with JAMF stuff, close your ears, Taylor, are number one, they're very aggressive with their release schedule, but they tend to, here's 8.5, here's 8.5.1, here's 8.5.2, and I must be, I'm one of the guys who will go install it when it comes out, knowing that I'm going to break my server. Hopefully it'll help some of you guys. So the whole mantra about waiting a week or two after a version is released to update and monitoring JAMF Nation, probably a really good idea because and I know they're working hard. They've hired a lot more developers and they're doing some development systems to try to narrow down, but it just seems like I seem to find a bug in every major version that comes out.
Yeah. JAMF love though, JAMF Nation is awesome.
JAMF Nation is awesome.
Their community website, talking about, that's one of the things that...
Request.
I know.
Area.
Plus, minus.
People can go on there and put a feature request in, and people can upvote or downvote it and things like that. And that's one thing. If you compare like Absolute Manage's support site, there's threads on there, and like 90% of the posts are from the people who work for Absolute. And you look at JAMF Nation, it's kind of the other way around. It's 90% user contributed, and it's not always questions. It's people like Rich posting things or me or whatever.
That's not necessarily a limitation of the suite. If you're managing more than iOS devices, like the other suites, like Absolute will do that. They'll do Android.
And to just make a point about updates, that break stuff, just make sure, I would highly recommend for any sort of systems management tool, make sure you set up a test environment and have actual machines in there.
Absolutely. Yep. And the other caveat that I have with JAMF is sometimes some of their technical documents that do walkthroughs and things are either either wrong or just not enough detail. And I'll end up calling support and go like, okay, I did this and it's not working. Well, did you set the MIME types to this? Well, that's not in the document. Well, it needs to be, okay, So I have harped on them on this issue, and I know, again, JAMF is another company like Code 42 in Minneapolis and Eau Claire that is on the accelerated growth curve right now, so they're bringing people on board at a very fast rate.
Only someone from Wisconsin would mention Eau Claire.
Okay, yes, sir.
Proud cheeseheads.
Follow up on the JAMF conversation because we're JAMF users, we love it, but one of our big frustrations with it is not being able to nest groups or not being able to exclude groups, in a larger group, say, okay, we want all except for the HR department. Does anybody have any sort of recommendations?
We just use
on how to
smart
work
groups.
around that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Well, smart groups, we want to nest smart groups too, in order to further limit.
Plus up that feature request. There's already a feature request.
Yeah, and there are ways to accomplish that with the hidden receipts trick. If you don't know that trick, ask about that on JAMF Nation, and a bunch of people will. Basically, if you have machines that are in a certain department or meet a certain criteria that you want to exclude, you can actually just send a Unix command that creates a hidden receipt file in the Casper folder. So when you're doing your smart group, you can say, I want people that have this software installed but don't have this receipt.
Okay.
So hidden, that's geeky.
We're down to our last minute, so one last question. You, sir, by the door. Or you right there. Whoever. Okay.
Does anybody have any experience with Aqua Connect?
I looked at it.
I actually ran it on a G5, so this will tell you when I did it. So it was a couple years ago. We were looking for something so that our help desk could have a Mac in front of them without having a Mac in front of them, and it worked. It worked. We ended up dropping it for a very, very plain reason of our graphics department got new systems, so we ended up getting a bunch of at the time G5s, Yeah, they were 3 years old, but they were still 2-core and had a bunch of RAM, so they were really good systems, and they gave them to the help desk. So I didn't need to do that anymore. You got to be prepared to support it. That's the thing. It's a service. You're going to stand up. You better be prepared to support it. So there's Aqua Connect and there's IRAP, IRAPP, I think is the other terminal server. So it works.
And I'm afraid that's all we have time for. So thank you very much for coming. Hopefully everyone, got valuable information out of this.